Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Wealth. My name is Paul Adams. I am wholly unprepared for this today. I did not even come up with a marginally offensive introduction of my business partner and president of Sound Financial Group, Corey Shepard. Welcome to the show, Corey.
I've been under a misunderstanding. I didn't know you were going for marginally offensive. I thought you were going for marginally entertaining. This puts it all in a totally different.
Entertaining is accidental. Offensive is the aim. I've just been exposed for every joke in my life where people are like, oh, that joke didn't land very well. I'm like, actually, it met its aim. You are plenty offended. You just didn't laugh. Paul Adams, hardening soft people since 1978. Well, speaking of hardening people, we are once again going to help harden all of you against the misnomers, misinformation, or financial entertainment that comes at you from all of the various media sources that we get exposed to.
Ooh, misnomers, misinformation, and misdirection. How about the three misses?
Listen, you're not supposed to see three misses at the same time, but I think these three misses, it applies. All right. With that, we are going to jump into this article today that deals with how do I know if I'm rich? Now, I will tell you that article headline, even to somebody in the financial industry, is it is clickbaity and it works. Like, how do I know if I'm rich? Like, well, even I click on it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're not going to tell me, but I'm clicking anyway.
It worked. We clicked on it. This is a title for the Instagram influencer generation. It's like, it's really asking, what does everyone else think of me? How do I know everyone else is going to think I'm rich, right?
And speaking of that, this is the first line. That was my contention when we found this article. I said, Corey, the article name shouldn't be, how do I know if I'm rich? It should be, how do I know other people will think I'm rich? So this is what the whole article is based on, is this Schwab survey. And it showed Americans' conception of being rich means having a net worth of $2.2 million. Now, this represents a $300,000 increase from last year's survey results.
Now, I don't know the exact methodology that they used in this survey, but it's something around some questions that kind of tally up to, this is about how much money people think on average it takes to be wealthy.
And which the biggest problem is, you are asking a bunch of people who don't work in this industry all the time, probably are not people that have, just by pure statistical likelihood, if they're asking a lot of people, they couldn't possibly have asked a bunch of people who already have their money handled. And so a vast majority of the people that you're interviewing are people that almost guaranteed can't possibly know if that's the right number. And I think it points
to... Or don't have that net worth.
Yep.
Right? Because there's probably picture someone who has a 2.2 million net worth, but, has $100,000 a month in expenses. They don't feel very rich.
Well,
because they're spending over $1 million a year. And other folks would be shocked at that, but it is true. It's just like such a weird question to ask to begin with. I can't even get over it, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Agreed. Well, and I think it speaks to that joke that Miranda shared with us right before we went on the air. That I think it's an old Chris Rock joke where he says if Bill Gates woke up with Oprah Winfrey money, he'd throw himself out the window, because it is all relative. It's all relative.
It is.
So here's additionally, statistics show that the top 2% of the United States population has a net worth of $2.4 million. So if we pause right there, wait a second, you're telling me that of all the people you could have interviewed of the entire universe, only 2% of them have the net worth that's enough that they would have proof of knowledge that they've accumulated that much and they are rich. 98% of the answerers, if statistics hold, would say that they don't, by definition, have the knowledge necessary to be able to answer that question accurately.
Well, and they're talking about, they use the words rich and wealth, like really back and forth a little bit. Like, what was the old Chris Rock you were talking about with rich and
yeah, where he says something about the basketball player Michael Jordan or something. And it says he's rich.
Or Kobe?
He's rich, or Kobe. I don't remember which one it was.
Oh, yeah,
but he says he's rich. He says, you know who's wealthy? The guy that owns that team, because he can write a check to pay somebody else to do a job, and that job makes them rich. That's how you know you're wealthy.
Yeah, it's how you know you're wealthy.
But to that point, only 5% of the United States, the wealthiest, have more than $1 million net worth. Therefore, 2% of the population
aren't even rich by this statistic. Yeah,
and rich. Now, here's what I think would be a good definition of rich. Now, this is what we get from financial journalism if their job wasn't to drive people clicking all the time. And that would be, it would be a formula. It would have something to do with your income. It would have something to do with the amount of income you can take every year off of a stack of assets. Mm-hmm. And then you would be able to come up with an answer, but they don't want that. What they want is, here's what most people said, because as Robert Cialdini talked about in his seminal classic, The Psychology of Influence, social proof is so strong. So if we just say a lot of other people think this is wealthy, it could work. So now here's the funny thing. You mentioned about rich versus wealthy, but then they gave him another word that the person filling out the survey, like, you know what would have been great is if they would have started with, what does financially comfortable mean to you? Because I bet if they gave this to 1,000 people, I bet you ended up with at least 998 different answers of what it means to be comfortable or what it means to be wealthy. Well, this other term that they also chose out of the air says 774,000. Now, here is something, Corey, you and I didn't talk about, but as we're in this conversation, it's occurring to me that our listeners should be very careful of.
Lay it on us.
Well, simple math is, we know if the 2.2 million was all capital at work, 2.2 million would throw off at a 4% distribution rate, $84,000 a year.
And I bet that it's not all capital work. Frankly, they're probably counting home equity in that number. So it's probably worse, but let's just stay let's stay with it. Yeah.
$88,000 a year.
Yeah.
But you're right. If it was all investment capital, it's probably not. People in their head, man, it's a $500,000 paid off home. So it's even less capital at work. So that's problem number one. Right. Problem number two is that whether it's the rich amount of 2.4 million or this $770,000 number, we can't help that we are in the morass with all of these other people who think that that's rich or thinks that will infect you.
Right.
So if you're listening to our show right now and you're one of our clients or somebody that's considering becoming a client, let's say you're making $300,000-$400,000 a year of income. 2.2 million, one, is not squat to you. You got to save a lot more. Two, if you're going to replace $300,000 a year, $7.5 million of capital at work.
So rich, not even financially comfortable for right. A lot of people is what we're really saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Path 65, where you're making $300,000 a year, and now you have 2.4 million. That's called the beginning of going broke. It's just going to take some time. And
I think there are plenty of Americans that were involved in this study that have a net worth of $700,000-800,000 primarily because of their home, and they're not feeling financially comfortable. Like you're making $200,000 a year, you have a $600,000 home that's, say, paid off because they've been living there for a while and they're 50, and you don't have much else saved, you are not financially comfortable. Exactly.
And here's the last one. Because you're around that morass, you're going to think 2.2 million is a lot of money when you need 7.5 million. And you have to be careful about this, because even if you go out of your way to cultivate the networks of people you spend time around, it's pretty hard to keep a circle exclusively of top 1% income earners. And as a result, you will have people, and even if they're all top 1% income earners, how many of them, in your experience, know the amount of capital work that's actually required for them to be financially independent, which is what we all should be pursuing, not being wealthy. Wealthy is like Instagram
BS.
bull.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's the Instagram bull. It's what I look like on Facebook. It's how pimpy do I look like when I pull up in my car and get out with the right kind of shoes. That's wealthy. Financially independent, and this is a big deal, it's autonomy. Financial independence does not mean all those entrapments. What financial independence means is not having to go to the meeting where everybody else is concerned about showing up looking awesome. Right. It's not having to go to the parties with the people that you roll your eyes at. It's like I was able to do the other day. I had a speaker, I was in an event, and it was supposed to be a faith-related event, and the speaker went off on politics, and I was like, I'm leaving. And I looked around at other people who I knew felt like I did, and I saw them like still going through the standing motions and clapping like a seal. Now, why? They got a network in that room. I built enough autonomy and freedom. My wife and I could just make a choice to leave when the topic didn't, and we didn't have to make a fit either. We didn't like throw it. Just quietly. It's just like, no, this is supposed to be a faith-related event. The stuff that's being talked about from the stage is not what we drove an hour to get here for, so we're just going to leave. That's it. But I know people that were in that room that couldn't leave because that's their network of referrals, and and I'm like, independence trumps wealth every time. Because I promise you, there are people who you would consider wealthy listening to this right now, and I don't know why this is making me angry.
We never do.
But we never know why. It usually comes out later. That's why I always stay to the end of the show. But how many people are listening to this now that are just as trapped in whatever places they would like more autonomy? They're trapped there. Mm-hmm. Because you could have, in fact, for those of you listening, in fact, we should put a link in this episode to it, is that video we did years ago, Corey, back in 2016 about Do You Think You're Rich? And it walks through how somebody worth $40 million may not be rich. But
that's where when 40 million is not enough?
40 million is not enough. Yeah, we'll put that in the description here because I think that one is key.
So here's the funny thing about this article, though, is that it shifts here halfway through to using a completely different set of logic for answering that question. It's literally like two articles were written and popped one after the other with no end in the middle.
Yes.
And I actually, there are some parts of this half of the article that make way more sense to me on making these assessments because they're more internal and related to what's important to you in life.
I have a theory, by the way, how the second half got written. He wrote the first half, and he's like, this is supposed to be a 6-minute read. It's only a 3-minute read. And then he goes to like open.ai, and it's like ways to get rich. And then it printed the other half of the article for him. He just copy-pasted it in. He's good.
That's funny. So here's some of the headlines. Like you're able to hear. So the paragraph starts with, since the dollar amount regarding wealth is subjective, which they just said it wasn't with a survey, but you can analyze your financial situation in multiple ways to determine if you're rich. Different facets of beliefs about wealth include the following. So are you able to save?
If I was his editor, I'd make him a more punchy writer this way. Since the dollar amount regarding wealth is subjective, here's 5 more ways you can basically make up whether you're rich or not.
Right. So it's true. It's kind of like they wrote this literally to get the most amount of people into this article. They're like, anyone else who's reading that's got pretty close to 2.2 million of wealth to be like, oh yeah, see, I'm rich. And then everyone else is like, wait, there must be more. Here's more. And then I'm going to ignore the top part and just listen to the things that I want to. So
you're right. Cause like then we got all the keywords, budgeting. Oh, Lending Club. We'll do a link back with Lending Club and they'll promote the article for us.
I know. That's so weird. Fintech company Lending Club recently reported that almost 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and then they're here to help by like covering
lending them some more money.
Right. You can afford the things you want. You're motivated by the life you want, not strictly money. Like if we're, I don't think they're thinking of these in the right context, but if you are, then that could make, I mean, it's more like, hey, I'm content. I don't need more, and thus I have enough money to live on for the rest of my life. But
in case you feel like garbage from the first half of the article, right. I'm not rich. It's like, here are 5 ways you can look at your life differently and decide you're rich anyway. Like, but it's like you're motivated by the life money, you want.
Right. But the things you want are apparently, they're like, if you live below your means, you'll be able to afford what you want, whether it's a new car or a Caribbean cruise. Setting a financial goal and meeting it requires wealth building habits. Well, no, that's called wealth spending habits, like having enough cash flow to spend on those things. Because like most of the wealthy folks, and this is back to Thomas Stanley, Millionaire Next Door and Stop Acting Rich, don't constantly drive new cars. In the rich category, maybe the wealthy category, they do.
Yeah.
But the way folks get to be rich younger and younger is not constantly driving those new cars. I don't know if they're going on cruises or not. That wasn't a part of the study. I guess you could control expenses in a certain way on a vacation if you did a cruise. All you can eat, maybe. So, money is a tool, not your enemy. I do like that as a one-liner because it is just a tool. You can use it for good or not for good. It can be a sword that cuts one way or the other. So bottom line. Ooh, but then they come back to the bottom line here at the end. Bottom line, being rich currently means having a net worth of about $2.2 million.
So he had to write that last part because it was like, you need 40 more words. And he's like, I'm on it. But we talked a little bit and we're going back and forth on some of the impact of this in your life. And even as you're just trying to sort out, like, what does this mean for my money and my future? Well, number one, I want to share with you guys, our view of wealth wouldn't be measured. The closest thing to our view of wealth is that one that you're motivated by your life. That's the closest, and it's still not right. Okay. Wealth is your ability to fully experience the life that you want to have. That's a little bit different for everybody. Now, we've talked in the past about this idea of moments of wealth. My mentor, guy I worked for, CEO of Pacific Advisors for years, really brought this to light in my life, is that there are things that create wealth in my life that have nothing to do with money. Yeah. And I'll give you an example of like a moment of wealth is like me coming home when I used to leave and I wasn't working from a studio on our property here. I used to leave and I would come home and I'm off the phone when I walk inside and the kids run up and greet me and my wife says hi from the kitchen and there's some great food cooking and the fireplace was on and it's just like and it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered if a $4 million Sikorsky helicopter dropped me off in front of my house with like a fountain in front and a round driveway, right? That moment doesn't get any better for me.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have the rest of my life handled, if I was financially stressed, walking in the door, trying to complete a business deal so we could pay our bills next month, or if I wasn't present at home with the family when I walked in the door because I didn't have my life set up right, so I'm responding to messages as I walk in, and I miss it all. Miss it. It was still there. I missed it. And so what we have to do is get our money handled well enough that we can actually experience our life without our money being in the way. So an easy way to think about it is for us to get financially independent, as long as you know how to live your life, you know how to treat your spouse, you know how to build relationships, you know how to take care of your body, you know how to take care of your faith and your spiritual heart, right? All of that stuff that if you get your money handled such that you're able to be financially independent and you're able to support a life that allows you to take care of those things, that's wealth. It's not going to be any of these numbers. And some people listening can do that on 2.4 million or less. You guys heard Chris Fabro, which we'll put a link to that on the link page for this, where he managed to never make over $100,000 a year and retire in his early 50s. He'd be fine with 2.4 million. And there's other people listening right now where
first class whenever he flies. He's like, I like sitting in the front planes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's some of you listening right now where 2.4 million would mean you couldn't live in the zip code you live in. And so it's more about you taking stock of what's the life you want to live, making an assessment of what that actually costs on an annual basis, and then putting yourself in a position that you're going to be able to fund that indefinitely into the future. That's financial independence. But that's a lot harder to do than a short article that just points out to you, as we say the article should have been labeled, how much money does it take for everybody else to think you're wealthy? But the minute you're making any decisions in your financial life to impress other people, it is the downfall of your independence and autonomy every time. So with that, I want you guys to hear that as an encouragement, not as a condemnation. The reason I deliver it so heavy is because the rest of the world would be perfectly happy with you thinking $2.4 million is rich. Because if you're making $300,000 a year, they would much rather that you spend your excess surplus every year, allow them to harvest it, rather than putting it on your balance sheet and turning it into a platform from which you have financial independence, you have lifetime autonomy, you have the ability to spend time with the people you care about, and inside of that, you build your wealthy lifestyle that includes having that level of autonomy. So with that, here at Sound Financial Group, kicking off into 2023, here still here in the first month with a big smile and a huge heart and a great deal of love for all of you that choose to subscribe and follow us. If you don't, we don't love you. But if you do subscribe, we love you. And we hope that this contribution has been an episode of you designing and building a good life. And I get to hear just a little bit of Corey's good life in the background.